Hey guys, welcome to our Living Dinosaurs webinar tonight with Eric Hovind, myself, and Dave Weotzel, an extraordinary man that I promise you're going to really enjoy hearing the stories and the encounters that he has had as he's gone and researched some of these things that you and I have just either read about in books or maybe just heard about through the grapevine, or maybe this is all brand new to you. You've never heard about Living Dinosaurs. I am so glad you're going to get to hear about this tonight. Dave, thanks so much for joining me tonight, buddy. I appreciate it.
Well, Eric, it's so good to be on the line with you. We've had a lot of enjoyable conversations in the past, and it's great to be able to actually have an interactive one here tonight.
This is going to be good because you and I get to talk about things that I'm like, the world needs to know this stuff. And you've been to these places and you talk about these things, and are they real? Did they really exist? Have they lived with man? Could some still be alive today? And at the end of this, here's what I want people to answer at the end of this, Dino Dave. Your nickname, Dino Dave. Are dinosaurs still living with people? I want to get your expert opinion at the end of this webinar, and I want you to present your information, and then I want that burning question answered for every single person that's joining us here tonight. So that's what I'm trying to do. Can you handle that?
Well, of course, if you go to places like the Carnegie Museum, which I have a picture of behind me with the magic of green screens and Zoom, they're going to tell you they all died out 60 million years ago. So that's the the mainstream view right there.
And I'm taking it you do not agree with the mainstream view.
We'll have a few things that might be slightly in opposition to that we'll talk about.
All right, I'm looking forward to that. Hey, for those of you joining me, I do want to let you know that today's webinar is sponsored by Third Day Coffee. I want to show you about that because this is really cool. This is worth me sharing my screen and talking to you about this. Third Day Coffee is absolutely amazing. They have an order, roast, ship process where you order it, then they roast it, then we ship it out. And it's actually developed. It uses the highest quality Arabica beans, so it's really, really good coffee. I've got, if you switch to my screen, I've got the Tree of Life, Let There Be Light coffee. They've got a Tree of Life coffee, the T-Rex coffee. That's for waking up in the morning. And then the Sunset coffee is their decaf. And I'm telling you, it really is. This is the coffee I drink every morning. I make my wife her coffee every morning before she goes to work. It really is good. Let me tell you why it's so cool. You get to share the gospel one sip at a time. Every cup of coffee that you drink shares the gospel because it supports a website we developed called whyiboughtyourcoffee.com. And this is awesome. All you have to do is get some cards that say whyiboughtyourcoffee.com. We make them available. You can actually get the cards. You buy somebody's coffee and it sends them to this website. And they're going to go through here. We've had over 13,000 people buy a cup of coffee for somebody and share this card and send somebody to this website. And it ends up sharing with them a story. And it ends up leading to the gospel of Jesus Christ. So I really love this. And Third Day Coffee does support this. If you want to know how it works, go to whyiboughtyourcoffee.com/how, whyiboughtyourcoffee.com/how, and you can learn how that works. Well, Dave, I've always been thrilled. Thrilled isn't the right word. There's a better adjective. Enthralled, just captivated by the idea of dinosaurs. Ever since I was a kid, and my dad started talking about these things, we'd go to museums and I'd learn about these things. And I remember in like 4th and 5th grade, hearing these guys talk about dinosaurs, and my dad starting to ask questions, as these people in museums would talk about dinosaurs. And I'm going, well, I think my dad's arguing with these guys, and I don't know what this is all about, but I think he's trying to say what they're teaching the kids isn't true. And then my dad began a whole ministry on dinosaurs in the Bible and how all that took place and where they all fit in. So you've kind of taken this, though, to a whole nother level. You've actually traveled to these places where there are reports of living dinosaurs. You're crazy, aren't you?
Well, here's what it takes. It takes someone that's a little bit nuts and likes roughing it. It sounds really kind of romantic to go to Africa or to go to the Amazon, but you have to be willing to rough it. It's just not, pleasant. It's definitely not one of your packaged, cruise vacation deals. You kind of have to have a lot of faith, pray a lot, and you just kind of get out there. And once you get there, it's pretty cheap because you're eating whatever. You're eating fruit and grasshoppers and, some freeze-dried food from home.
Hang on, you've really eaten grasshoppers.
Yeah, they're not so bad. I don't like them when they're kicking, but as long as they fry them up, they're not so bad. But I've been to places like the Amazon. I've been to places like Papua New Guinea multiple times. Been to Zambia, the swamps of Benguela, where David Livingstone died. I've been to Loch Ness, been to Lake Champlain, been to Lake Okanagan out in British Columbia. And we'll talk about some of these as we go along today. But it's taken me years, but I've pretty much been to every credible, and when I say credible, that means it's kind of multiple lines of evidence, not just one wingnut saying, hey, I saw something there, but all the credible sites out there. And some of them are kind of ruled out, others, man, they're very promising still. And I've seen some pretty crazy stuff along the way.
Whoa. Okay. I cannot wait to hear what you have to say tonight. Dave's got a kind of a presentation for us. And you said this is really, when you travel, because you travel and speak on this is really your most popular talk that you give.
Well, this is my personal area of research, right? So you can't be an expert in everything. I talk about geology, you do too, flood geology, and we talk about genetics and information theory, and we talk about, problems with evolution and biology, and we talk about a lot of these different things. But you can't be an expert, on everything. And so I do have a master's degree in biological sciences. I grew up doing a lot of camping and roughing it. I kind of grew up on a farm. My dad's got cows, he had pigs and chickens, and not a real farm, but kind of a farm. And we just did all this stuff. And so I think God really prepared me. And then what really launched me on this, kind of a little bit like you, Eric, was that as a teenager, I went to the Boston Museum of Science, and I saw something like what you're seeing on my screen behind me. It wasn't a T-Rex, it was a Triceratops. And I remember as a young man going there, it was my first real look at dinosaur skeleton, like real bones. And I was like, it's crazy. That's beautiful. I'm like in awe of it. And then I looked down and here's this sign, and you've seen them if you've been to a museum, and it says, this dinosaur died out 60 million years before man evolved. And it just bugged me. I mean, I know that's what they believe. It wasn't a surprise, but to put it there like it's a fact, right along with the bones, just bothered me. And here I am, a teenager, right? And I got into an argument with somebody at the Boston Museum of Science about this. So I kind of credit them with launching my degree, my career into cryptozoology.
That's awesome. So the evolutionists kind of launched you into saying, I want to study this out myself. Right. That's great. And you've gotten to change a lot of minds. I mean, the evidence and the information you present is incredibly compelling. So I've gotten to hold some of it in my hand there at your house. I don't know if you're going to, how many of the pieces you're going to talk about tonight, but when I hold some of these pieces, I'm going, if somebody were to hold this in their hands, they would have to at least question the evolution worldview that they've been brought up in, because it just doesn't fit. It just doesn't make sense with what we're holding in our hand right now.
Well, there's a lot of things we could talk about, and maybe we can do it on another occasion. But yeah, there's some artifacts that have been found down deep in the lower layers of the geological record that are clearly human artifacts. There weren't dinosaurs going around making hammers and bells. There weren't Bellosauruses and Hammersauruses. But I think today our focus is on dinosaurs, and dinosaurs alone, okay, with soft tissue and with carbon-14 dating and with just some of the exciting finds in recent years. It's a great time to be a creationist. Wow. And then the possibility of a living dinosaur. And let me tell you, Eric, if we find a living dinosaur, this will be a sensation. It's going to be massive. It's going to be a little bit different than finding some, fish that was supposed to be extinct for 300 million years. That's interesting and very compelling. But a living dinosaur, that will be a major credibility shock to the evolutionists, and will really, I think, make news for probably a year or two. It'll be a wonderful opportunity for us to, as creationists, just say, hey, look, that's what we've been saying all along, is that men and dinosaurs have coexisted since the creation. All
right, so those of you watching right now, some of you were born after 1990. Now that's hard for me to fathom, but I just want you, you need to learn how to use Zoom anyway. One of the features is you can raise your hand in Zoom if you were born after 1990. So anytime after 1990 up to 2020, in the last 30 years, you're under 30 years old is what that means. Try to lift your hand up on the chat. I need to see. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Any more? 11, 12. Oh, wow. There's a lot of you that are under 30. 13, 14. Okay, so we got a bunch of you born pre-19 or after post-1990. Here's why I asked. You guys were raised with things like this, okay? Jurassic Park came out in 1993 and kind of blew everybody away with the graphics and what they had and their dinosaurs. I mean, it was something else to see what Jurassic Park did with dinosaurs, and they really helped popularize this idea of dinosaurs. I just need you guys to know that the rest of us, we grew up in an age before Jurassic Park. We didn't have all the cool dinosaurs that you know nothing about the world that we had to grow up in. We grew up with stuff like this, okay? This was the movies and the special effects that, well, maybe Dave more than me, but that we got to grow up with when we're trying to learn about dinosaurs. And it's like, are dinosaurs interesting? And I'm thinking, no, not really, okay? I mean, to get right down to it, they weren't. So the game got really cool until Barney came along, and unfortunately, I guess he did make dinosaurs kind of popular for kids, but in my opinion, totally ruined dinosaurs for an entire generation of children. Thankfully, they came back with more really cool things. And now, if you put anything about dinosaurs in your movie, Jurassic Park, Jurassic World, Lost World, Ice Age, everything, you're gonna increase the popularity of the show with the kids because kids love dinosaurs. They can't get enough of it. That's why they've made The Land Before Time 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And they're still going, man. They're not going to stop with The Land Before Times. Books on dinosaurs are incredibly popular. They're some of the best-selling books out there if you write a book on dinosaurs. So I want you to realize dinosaurs are being used. Now, here's the deal. The message that they're sending to the kids right now is not the message that God's Word gives us. God's Word tells us that He created everything. And the message that they're getting from shows like Dinosaur Train and things like that is not giving them the truth. They're using dinosaurs to bring them to a perspective of the world. We call that a worldview. They're using them to teach kids, hey, dinosaurs died 65 million years ago. And instantly, if they believe that, their understanding of the Bible is going to be undermined because of their belief that dinosaurs lived 65 million years ago. And I think that's the problem. Now, I'm real thankful for guys like Dave and museums and creationists in Texas and California, the Ark Encounter Creation Museum in Kentucky, that are using dinosaurs to teach the truth about creation. And that's why I'm so excited about what Dave is doing, because to actually go to these places, to research these things himself and say, hey, I want to know for myself what's the truth about this. I think it's so critically important. So you're in for a treat as Dave gets into his presentation tonight. Dave, thank you, man, for spending your time. Thank your wife for taking all her years of vacation that you have done. And
Eric, my itinerary got blown out the window. I'm thankful for a chance to talk about my favorite thing in all the world.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. She has put up with traveling to a lot of places and letting you take a lot of time to go to these places. So thank you. I want you to kind of just lead the way here, talking about living dinosaurs.
What I want to do is I want to kind of take you on virtual expeditions here to some of the places that I've been, and share with you some of the things I've seen, and maybe give you some of the top cryptid hots. What is a cryptid? Well, a cryptid is a creature that we study in cryptozoology. So I want to talk about cryptozoology for just a little bit, and I want to kind of explain to you what is cryptozoology, kind of give you cryptozoology in action. And then I want to talk about some lake monsters. What would be maybe the top 3 most likely lake monsters out there? And I'll talk about some of those places I've been. And then pterosaurs. I want to talk about one in particular, the ropen of Papua New Guinea. And again, I can't talk about every place. I've been to Zambia looking for a creature there called the Congo motto. Wasn't terribly promising, but I've been to a lot of places that I'm not going to be able to talk about. And then I want to talk about a living sauropod, the Mokele mbembe. And so we're talking about really three types of monsters here. We're talking about something like this plesiosaur. If you can see my screen, it's a little small there, but hopefully I'll get in here close. You can see that plesiosaur. And so the plesiosaur is your swimming monsters. We'll talk about those guys. Then we're going to talk about the living pterosaur, and I've got a dimorphodon here. You can see him, got some nice teeth. We'll open up his mouth a little bit, so kind of get it right on the screen. Give you kids nightmares tonight. All right, so there's a dimorphodon. And then we have the sauropod dinosaur, and that's your Mokele mbembe. We'll talk about these three monsters, these three dinosaurians. Technically, dinosaurs are just the walking great reptiles, but we're going to use the word dinosaurs in a more generic sense, in a more popular sense, dinosaurians, which would include the plesiosaurs, the swimming reptiles, the pterosaurs, the great flying reptiles, and the dinosaurs. So let's dive into this thing. Cryptozoology. Now, some of you folks are old hands at creationism. I'm sure you probably know what this creature on the left is, the coelacanth. And here's a creature that was thought to be extinct millions of years ago. And in fact, they were so sure it was extinct that if you found one of these things in a rock layer, it was an index fossil. And they could guarantee that rock layer was millions of years old. And then someone doesn't know any better, catches one off the coast of Madagascar and South Africa. And lo and behold, now we have two populations of living coelacanths. Now, this fellow on the right here might be a little bit less familiar to you, but this is an okapi. It's kind of a bashful looking cross between a zebra and a giraffe. And along about the turn of the 20th century, talking early 1900s, the British had a governor in equatorial Africa in the area we today call the Congo, and his name was Johnston. And Johnston began to hear reports from the indigenous peoples about this creature that called the okapi. And they said, well, it's kind of like a zebra and kind of like a giraffe. And a lot of the Western people said, yeah, they're just making up ridiculous stories. There's no way, it's impossible. And so they didn't think that this creature existed. But Johnston gave it a little bit of, he thought there was some veracity to it. So he gave it a little bit of time and he investigated it. And eventually he found the hide of one of these things, sent it back to the British Museum of Natural History in London, and they declared it to be a species of giraffe because of the stripes. Eventually, Johnston got a dead one. And lo and behold, it wasn't a species of giraffe, a species of zebra because of the stripes. It was a species of giraffe, and so it's called the forest giraffe. It's got a much shorter neck than the giraffes that we're more familiar with from the savannas. But this is a giraffe that's got some pretty cool things. He's got the longest neck, and rather the longest tongue out there. He's the only animal that can lick his own ears. Now try doing that tonight while you're looking in the mirror and see how you do with it. But he can lick his own ears. That's pretty incredible. So, and then even more recently, things have been found. There was a peccanary that was found by a guy by the name of Woetzel, which is a great name for an explorer. And the peccanary was found down in South America. And then you had this monitor lizard, talking about a 6-foot-long monitor lizard that was found in the Philippines. And this is pretty incredible. I mean, 2009, populated islands. You'd think you'd know about reptiles that are 6 feet long. People didn't know about it. And so here is Varanus bitawa, and the reports were coming in, but these things lived in trees and a lot of research, and finally able to find it. But this is how science progresses. Science doesn't progress by an evolutionary worldview that says, no, these creatures all died about 60 million years ago, so don't even bother to look for them. And Dave, you're crazy and wasting your time to go out and look for these things. Science progresses by people looking at the evidence, and when there is compelling evidence, multiple lines of evidence, going out in the field and doing the hard work, the work of cryptozoology. Crypto meaning hidden, zoology meaning the study of animals. So it's animals that have not yet been proven to exist by science. And every year, new species are discovered. We're talking about a lot of small things, frogs, insects, but sometimes a dozen or more are discovered in a year. Plants, and they get named, they get a scientific name, they get described. And so we had in 2009 a 6-foot-long monitor lizard that was classified. Well, so maybe some of the great reptiles, the plesiosaurs, the great swimming reptiles, or maybe some of the dinosaurs, the walking great reptiles, or maybe some of the pterosaurs, the flying great reptiles, could still be alive in some remote areas of the earth. I'm not saying 100% for sure. It's not 100% until we catch one. Picture's not going to cut it. Video's not going to cut it. Too easy to fake that stuff. Even back in the days of Charles Darwin, you had to get a species, you had to get a living, a corpse or a living one to be able to give it a species name. So let's jump into it. Let's talk about some of these more likely lake monsters. And I want to begin with Lake Champlain's Champ. Now, Lake Champlain is a very deep lake that makes the border between the state of Vermont and the state of New York in the United States. And this creature's been seen ever since the days of Champlain himself, and when he came up, and the lake was named after him, but Samuel D. Champlain, and he came up there through the St. Lawrence Seaway, and the indigenous peoples, the Abenaki Indians, talked about this creature in the lake. The most famous photo of the lake monster is a 1977 photo by Sandra Mancy, and I met Sandra. I know Eric's dad has met her, and so she used to live in New Hampshire, not far from where I went to school. And it's a great photo, probably the best photo of a lake monster. But almost every year, somebody's seeing Champ. Lots of reports, and I would say it's one of the more likely ones. A video came out in summer 2005. It's called the Pete Burdett and Dick F. Alter video. And here you can see, I have my little arrow with my mouse, but you see this long neck and what looks almost like a flipper down below it. Now, these guys are seasoned fishermen, and ABC News bought the rights to the video, and they aired it one time, and then it disappeared. It vamoosed from their website. There's some poor quality videos you can see on YouTube, but unfortunately, the original video has been locked up, and ABC is not showing it, and you cannot access it in their archives. But here's another picture of the neck kind of looking up out of the water. This is Lady. She's Katie Elizabeth, and she's in charge of Champ Search. And this is basically what she does full time. And I'm going to move ahead. Here's her little echo location machine. And it's kind of like a sonar in that she puts sounds out and bounces back. And she thought she was getting this log. And she started her echolocation, and she started getting some images from this. Later on, she goes back. She goes to see these images. And this is what it is. It's a flipper coming out of this thing. So pretty cool. And so this just has come out in the last year or so, Champ Search 2019.
So, hey, but this is last year, 2019.
Well, yeah, she just came out with this. Exactly.
Dude, I want to see more of that. All right. Sorry. Keep going.
It's out there. If you go to Katie Elizabeth and Champ Search, you can see it. And yeah, it's pretty cool.
All right, we'll have to send a link to everybody to watch that maybe.
Well, let's jump ahead to Loch Ness. Now, this is everybody's favorite lake monster, and I still include it because it's so popular. But honestly, we haven't had nearly as much evidence for Loch Ness. Now, I've been to Loch Ness. I went all over the place, and I talked to some people. One of the guys I talked to was Dr. Robert Rines, and he has at one point captured these sonar images of what would appear to be a flipper and a long neck. Okay, so this is a boat that I was on. Now, the boat is called the Royal Scot, and the skipper here is the right side of the screen, and he has had multiple occasions where something really big kind of went underneath his boat. And so that is, he thinks it's a plesiosaur, but he hasn't anything recently. This is the most recent sonar image he's holding up here in the lower right. And so I don't know whether the creature died or what, but it just doesn't seem like there's any really good, credible evidence. Here is Lake Okanagan. Now, Lake Okanagan, on the other hand, is hot. I mean, there's all kinds of sightings. We got videos, we got pictures, we got stuff happening every year. And this creature is called Ogopogo. Great name for a monster, I think, Ogopogo. And you have the book In Search of Ogopogo there, and you have a picture there of the whole lake. Very narrow, very deep, 800 feet deep, 79 miles long, glacial lake there up in British Columbia. And here's some video that was taken on the left and a photograph. A lot of the sightings of Ogopogo are these humps coming up, kind of like bumps coming out of the water. So maybe it's something like a plesiosaur. I mean, maybe it's you got the neck and the body making these humps, but sometimes it comes clean out of the water and it's an arch and you can see air underneath. So I rather suspect that it's something else. I think it's more like a sea serpent. I actually saw Ogopogo myself. Here I am on this lake, on Lake Okanagan, and I was driving the boat, and you can see there's a pretty good wind, and we came around this one point that you see in the upper left there, And it's like things calmed down. And I kind of cut the engine. We were all looking, and it was like this kind of tranquil moment. And all of a sudden, there was these humps came out of the water. They just broke the surface, never saw a head, never saw a tail, just humps. And they started moving away from us at a high rate of speed. So my wife has the video camera, and I turned to her and I yell, grab the video camera. She turns to my daughter and says, get your hand out of the water. And I'm thinking, who cares about my daughter's hand? You know, we can get her a prosthetic limb or something, get a picture of the monster. Not really, but I mean, that's kind of what I felt like at the time. So by the time my precious wife got the video camera on and got it started, the creature had resubmerged, but it left behind this huge wake. And so we got a picture of the wake. That's my fish that got away story. I did see it. I did see Ogopogo. I really know there's something in that lake. Rather than it being a plesiosaur, perhaps it's something like a Basilosaurus, also called a Zeuglodon. This is a whale-like creature, believed to be extinct, but it was kind of more like a sea serpent. You got this elongated form. We've never found a sea serpent in the fossil record, though there's lots of reports from the days of the sailing ships when they sailed without making noise, people seeing, you know, these things in the ocean. But we do have the Basilosaurus, and maybe that's what it is. All right, let's talk about the ropin of Papua New Guinea. This is one of my absolute favorite cryptids. I've been to Papua New Guinea multiple times looking for this creature called the ropin. And the ropin is sometimes called a demon flyer. It's got various names depending on the islands that you go to there in Papua New Guinea. They got some colloquial names for the creature, but it has a glow. It glows like a firefly. It flies around at night, has teeth in the beak, has this long tail with a diamond-shaped flange at the end of it, and it has anywhere from a 10 to 12 foot wingspan. Now, one of the things you find out if you start doing cryptid research is that these monsters are nowhere near as big as they were in the fossil record. So in the fossil record, you've got some really big pterosaurs. You've got Quetzalcoatlus that's out there that's got 35 foot wingspan, basically of a fighter jet. And it's just massive, you know. Even Pteranodon is just really big. These things are smaller, but you're still talking like a 10 foot wingspan. This is 3 meters plus. So they're really big and they're flying around out there. Some reports are even more, but they're really known on these little islands like the Umba Island, the Siasi chain on New Britain Island there. And it's a long ways. For me to fly there, it's 27 and a half hours one way in the airplane. And that includes going to Australia, then going up to Papua New Guinea. Then you got to charter a plane to take you over and land on a little grass strip, which that's really a lot of fun. And then you get a boat, which takes you around to the middle part of the island where the mountains are. And you see this volcanic mountain there in the background. And these mountains are really cool. They go up really steep and there are no trails up. So you got to kind of hack your way up through. And then there's this caldera, this kind of sunken volcano in the top. And in that is water, and that's the fresh water. And so the belief is that that's where they're getting their fresh waters. They're swooping into those, and they've been seen there a number of times. And so we camped out up there. Here you see us putting our backpacks on, all the little village kids chasing us, following us. They want to see what are these crazy white dudes coming up here checking out, you know. And so all these beautiful children from the island, they just want to come and touch your skin and talk to you and hear about America. And we just fell in love with the kids. But here's just a typical little village. And we'd sit down and we'd talk to them. And they'd want to know, what are you here for? You know, what's going on? You just can't walk through their village. So you sit down in the center spot and you begin to talk to them and say who you are and where you're coming from. And then you kind of talk about animals and what do you guys have for animals? And then what about this creature roping? And some of them will have seen it. Like this guy here with the funny looking ear, he's seen the thing multiple times and he'd tell you about it. And we'd learn about what the creature eats and how big it is and how often they see it. And then we'd sometimes recruit some of them to help us haul our luggage up there because we had night vision equipment and thermal imagers and, you know, infrared photography and lots of batteries and all this stuff we were hauling with us up into these mountains. So based on the reports of the indigenous people, we believe it's something like this Dimorphodon. It's got a little bit of a head crest, which isn't typical for the Dimorphodon, but understand, just like we got lots of varieties of dogs today, if you had one dog that you knew from the fossil record, what's the likelihood that it would happen to match your pet dog that you have in your backyard? There's just lots of capacity for variation that God's built into these monstrous creatures. And so perhaps you've got lots of flavors that weren't preserved in the fossils,
Perhaps they've just diversified since, and you've got things that never existed in the pre-flood world, exactly, like this type of a creature. Now, some of you guys, I apologize if you've just eaten dinner, but here is dinner for some of these kids. These are kids that, their mom packs them a lunch, and it's fresh. You don't need to refrigerate this stuff. You don't need to freeze dry it. You don't need to can it. You just pull it out and you stick it in your mouth, and you can swallow it kicking, and it's just as fresh protein as you can possibly get. But I just thought I'd give you a little local color there. These guys love to eat these giant locusts. Now, when you're hiking up these volcanic peaks, okay, this is some sunlight. It's sun, then rain, sun, then rain. You're hacking your way through this vegetation. It's jungle. It's rainforest. And there's these tree leeches. And the tree leeches just drop out of the trees, and they're literally all over the trails. And it's misty, and it starts raining, and the tree leeches start dropping on you, and the tree leeches will just attach to your legs, and you're picking them off, and you don't stop, because if you stop, then 2 or 3 more jump on the other leg while you're picking them off this leg. And so it's like their version of the mosquito. They're just these terrible pests that are constantly biting you, like, man, and they go through your socks and they're biting you. So this isn't for those that, want a nice, quiet, recreational vacation getaway. But then the sun comes out, we're drying our clothes, and we had these hammocks, which were really cool because it kind of got you off the ground. It was a little bit more of a breezy sort of a setup for the evening, and they had a nice rain fly there. So we had these jungle hammocks. And here's the lake. This is Lake Pung at the top of this volcanic peak. Just a beautiful mountain lake. We went down, we swam across it, and just had a ball. But we would stay up all night. I would take one shift. Maybe I would go from 9 o'clock till 1 o'clock. And then my buddy would go from 1 o'clock to 6 o'clock. And we would stay up all night watching for this monster. And one night I was on duty, and I was looking out over this beautiful scene. And I saw between me and the next mountain a glowing light fly through the valley. And from my perspective, it was about 1/3 the size of the full moon. So it is big, it's bright, and it's between me and the mountain. It's not a shooting star. There's nobody that's playing with drones or, something like that. I mean, they don't even have electricity on this island. And my guide is sitting next to me, and I'm like, and he's like, yeah, that's it. You just saw the open. Now, I didn't see the outline of it. I can't tell you it was something like this. All I can tell you is that it glowed, it was big, it was silent, and it flew between me and the next mountain.
Thank you for joining us for this engaging conversation. To view this and many more conversations in their entirety, we invite you to partner with us at creationtoday.org/partner.